to Corporate Cafecito,
a Latin and business podcast where we share insights and strategies to help entrepreneurs and professionals thrive.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Corporate Cafecito. It is 2026, and one of the things that we want to do is really highlight people who are telling our stories, especially at a time when immigration is weighing heavily on our hearts, which is why I'm thrilled to have Reyna Grande. She is Mexican born, came to the States at a very young age, immigrated. She has an amazing story, and she's gotten here and she has just made like the most beautiful life by telling her story and sharing the stories of other immigrants through her work as an author. And now she's even branched off into fiction writing, but the majority of her writing comes from the heart. So, Reina, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi. So thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's such a pleasure to be in conversation with you. And just a little bit about myself. I mean, like you said, I'm originally from Mexico and I immigrated to the US at the age of 9. I crossed the border through the Tijuana, San Diego area when my father went back to Mexico after being here since I was 2 years old. He came out here to work and then he went back to Mexico and took me and my brother and my older sister across the border and brought us to live in California with him. It was a very traumatic experience, crossing that border at a young age, but also not, it wasn't just the border crossing, but what came before and then what happened after. And I write a lot in my memoirs about the experience of the children who get left behind when their parents are forced to migrate. And so I talk a lot about the trauma of family separation. And then, of course, I write about the trauma of crossing the border as a child. And then I talk a lot about what happens after that reunification and how messy and complicated it is for families that have been separated for so long to start living together again, and how the distances that have been created because of migration. So that is something that I really like to write, is that experience that centers around child migration. Because as a child myself, when I crossed the border, I really feel that it's important for children to have a voice, right? Immigrant children to have a voice. And that has been my goal as a writer, is to center those voices, to be able to speak for a community that is very vulnerable and that has different experiences than adult immigrants. But ultimately, the immigrant experience is one that is full of trauma, and yet, despite all that, despite the way we get dehumanized and vilified, we still continue to strive towards a better future for us and for our families and for future generations.
One of the things I love about your books is you really talk about like the meaning of home and that like el hogar, what it means and that warmth. Where do you like how, because your home changed a lot as you were growing up. How do you, what do you call home? Where's home?
Yeah. So in my memoir, A Dream Called
Yeah.
Home, home is the central theme in this book, because this book does interrogate, right? Like, what is the meaning of home and where is home? And one of the things I was trying to write about in this memoir is how, as an immigrant, home was the first casualty of immigration, right? Because as soon as my father immigrated, and then my mother immigrated, and then we immigrated after that, like, home was lost. And that is an irony in my life, in my family, that in in trying to build us a house, my parents destroyed our home. And so as a little girl, I no longer had a home. I felt, that emotional homelessness, and I was longing and dreaming to one day have a home again. And then when I immigrated to California, it was in pursuit of that dream of having a home. I didn't have lofty dreams, you know.
Yeah.
I wasn't dreaming of the American dream. It was like I just want to have a home. I want to have a family. I want to have parents. And so I didn't find that here once I immigrated, because I realized that my family wasn't the same anymore, and we weren't unable to put ourselves back together after the immigration and borders came between us. So then I continued to long for home all through my teenage years, my young adult years. And there a part of me was very resentful towards my parents for not being able to provide that home for me. And then there came a point, and I write about in the book, that I realized, nobody's going to give me that home. I have to build that home myself. And so I started to work towards that, to be more proactive in building myself the home that I had always longed to have. And then I also had to like reframe the way I had seen home and realize, wait, like home is not a place on a map. you know Home is something that I can carry with me wherever I go. And so thinking about, like, what does that mean to me? What kind of home can I build for myself that I can carry with me wherever I go?
Mhm.
Then I started to realize, like, that home is made up of things that we care about. Home is made up of, like, our traditions and our uh, advice from our abuelita. Our the food that we make, and the places that we enjoy going to. Home is also, in my case, my writing, my books. My books are my home, and I can carry them wherever I go. And I've been, very, very fortunate that as a woman, I have been able to then create a home that is very loving, very stable, not just for myself, but for my children now, who are enjoying a very beautiful home life where they feel, provided for in every way. And to me, that is my biggest triumph, is being able to provide a very stable, loving home for my children.
I think that's so important. Like the gift of, I always tell my kids, like, my job is to make you feel safe and loved, is to give that to you, right? And to me, that's my definition of home. Somewhere where you could go where you feel safe and loved. And to your point, right? Sometimes that's my parents' house. Sometimes it's, era mi abuelita's house, where you could just go and you just feel safe and loved. And I think about your story, and I know that you wrote a lot about, like, the journey in your book, The Distance Between Us. And by the way, I think it's very impressive and also sad that, like, I didn't hear about your book, The Distance Between Us, until recently. I think with immigration, with where we are with ICE and just the political climate of the US, it's gotten more traction. So I feel saddened that I didn't, like, that it wasn't highlighted as like a Latina must read
It,
since
that never
2012.
happens to me.
Oh.
I'm on my ninth book. Here's my ninth book, and it hasn't made a single most anticipated list of 2026.
Not yet. We're
Not
gonna
a
get it
single one,
there.
right? And this happens to me every time with every book. It just doesn't really get a lot of, like, buzz. It doesn't get a lot of media attention. But then it's word of mouth.
It is word
Peop
of mouth. It's
Yeah, it's a
community.
yeah, it's the community showing up. I have a lot of support, like, from teachers, for example. I feel that teachers have single-handedly made my career, because they're the ones that are always supportive of my work. They, teach it in their classrooms. They share it with their students and outside of their classrooms. And yeah, it's been a lot of, like, hustle, hustle, hustle. Like, how do I get the word out about my books? How do I find, help it, like, get to readers that might
Mhm.
need to read this story? But so I'm glad that it finally found its
Yeah.
way to you.
It's in Chicago. We're all over your books now. And I think it's very inspirational because a lot of us, and so I was born here, but I think about like my friends who have had to leave kids behind, or I think about like my friends where I'm just like, well, I'll go fly them here for you to see them. Because it's hard when you leave a child behind, and it's hard to be
Oh
the child
yeah.
that's left behind. Um, how was your journey? How was like the physical journey of coming here? Because you're from Guerrero, right? So
Mhm.
you said you crossed in Tijuana, but how was that? Like who did you cross with? What was your experience?
Yeah. Well, my father hired a smuggler, a coyote, just somebody he found in Tijuana. We didn't have like previous references for this guy. He just left us at when we got to Tijuana, he left us at a hotel and then went out to look for a coyote. And so he found some guy who then you know guided us through the border, but then we got caught. I mean, soon after we had started, like we got
Ugh.
caught by border patrol, and then we tried again. The next day we went out again, and then we got caught again. And then the third time, right before we tried the third time, my father said, "This is the last time. If we don't make it, I'm sending you back to my mother's house, and I'm gonna go by myself because obviously, it's really hard to cross a border when you're on your own, let alone when you have three
With three
kids with you."
kids. Yeah.
So my father said, like, "I'm gonna have to send you kids back, and I'm gonna have to cross the border by myself." And so he warned us that last time. He's like, "This is it. Third time, that's it. This is the only chance you get." And miraculously, we managed to cross that third time, and we tried at night. The previous two times were during the day, and the third time we tried at night. And it was really scary at night. It's like pitch black. You can't see where you're going. We were so terrified of getting lost, um, and then the helicopters with their searchlights, and having to crawl under the bushes to hide from the helicopters. And it was a very scary experience. But I remembered, once we got to a point where the coyote said that, we've made it. But we were still in the
You're
middle of
still
nowhere.
hiding, crouching.
Yeah,
You're
we're
like
still in the
it's
middle of nowhere, but somehow he
yeah.
knew. He's like, "We've made it." And then we could
What a
see like
relief.
city lights twinkling in the distance. And then he said, "That's where we're headed." And so we continued to keep walking. I think one of my vivid memories I have is um, being on the ground by the freeway, and it might have been the five freeway, but we were on the ground trying to stay out of sight. And then as soon as there were no more cars passing through, we had to run across that freeway. And I almost crashed into the dividing wall because I couldn't see it in the
Mm.
dark. I almost crashed into it, and then my father like picked me up and just threw me over that little divider. And then we had to get to the other side. But that's one of my vivid memories of that crossing. And then after that, we got to a house of the other smuggler that was in charge of driving us to LA, and we had to lie down and stay out of sight in the car. And my siblings and I were not used to being in cars. It was rare in Mexico when we got into a car. So then we were getting super car sick on the way
No.
to LA. And then my brother threw up. So then the car smelled like vomit. And we were super hungry. And the smuggler didn't want to stop to get us anything to eat because he didn't want to risk it. So then he gave us a bag of sunflower seeds, And we thought we had never eaten sunflower seeds, first of all, because in my hometown sunflower seeds are for birds. We don't eat sunflower seeds. We eat pumpkin seeds, but we
Yeah.
had never eaten sunflower seeds. So he gave us a bag of sunflower seeds to eat for breakfast. And we thought, here we are coming to the quote unquote richest country in the world, and they're eating bird food.
Those first influences are, they just impact you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, but we ate them, we liked them. And ever since then, I remember, sunflower seeds were the first breakfast I had in the
In the United
US.
States. How was it when you got to your home where your mom was?
Well, I mean, well, it was my stepmother because
Okay,
my
sorry.
parents were divorced. Well, when we got to LA to live with my dad and my stepmom, it was kind of difficult because we got caught into that drama between my dad, my mom, and my stepdad.
I can
I mean,
imagine,
my
yeah.
stepmom, because my dad left my mom for my stepmom,
Mm.
and so my mom really hated her, and my stepmom also hated her and hated us by extension because we were her children, right? And so since the very beginning, after arriving in this house, she made it very clear that we were not wanted. She really resented the responsibility of having to take on three stepchildren. And there was a lot of like push and pull between like we were always playing tug of war with my father, you
Mhm.
know that we wanted him to pay attention to us, and then she wanted him to pay attention to her. And so he was kind of caught in the middle, and then he always sided with her. um and there were times when my dad would hit us and we didn't even know why he was hitting us, but we knew that she had complained about something. And instead of telling us, about
What
whatever we
it
had
was
done
and
that
trying to figure
displeased
out,
her,
yeah.
she would constantly complain to him. And then to pacify her, he would come and hit us. And we had no idea what we had done. Like we just got a beating and we're like, we don't know what the hell we did, So in this household, we were always walking on eggshells. Like we knew we didn't belong there. We weren't wanted there. Um, and we were very excluded to the point where my stepmother and my father would eat dinner together, and then after they were done, then we could come into the kitchen to have dinner. Like we didn't even eat dinner as a family. We were so excluded in many different ways. And so that was really hard for us because for many years we had in when we were in Mexico, we had been longing for that family, for that
Right.
home, and to finally have a dad and all that. And then we come here and we're like, we're unwanted, just the way we were unwanted at my, paternal grandma's house in Mexico, where we were treated like we were just burdens to them. That's the same way we were
That you
treated.
felt when you
when-
got here.
Yeah. And so that made it really hard. And I know my dad, he had his own traumas and whatever, but his alcoholism did not help, and he also had like anger management issues and whatever. And it was just not a great situation all around. And my siblings and I, just we were on survival mode the whole time, you know and
Yeah.
that makes me really sad as a child, thinking back of those years. Like it was just, we're on survival mode. Our brains are constantly like fight or flight mode, and it really impacted us so much.
So my mom always tells me in Mexico, she doesn't remember anyone having mental health issues. And I'm like, I think the reason why you remember that is because everyone self-medicated and we had a lot of alcoholism. We have a lot of alcoholism in my family. Um, and I think that I'm like, that was the way to deal with the trauma or the depression or the feelings that they wanted to subside, which is unfortunate. And I think that your healing process and by you sharing your story you're really shining a light on how hard that transition can be. I know you talked about in your book, A Dream Called Home, that was like 6 years after your first book of The Distance Between Us. You talk a lot about like some of your triumphs now, right? When you're starting to mature and you're going towards your education. I know you're the first one in your family, as am I, to graduate from college. So that's awesome. We're setting good trends. Tell me a little bit about your pursuit of education and why you chose to continue studying.
Yeah. I think for me that that is one thing that I appreciate about my father, and why I can forgive the guy for everything else. Because the one thing my father was so good at was always talking about the importance of education. You know, he only went to the third grade, and so he wanted his children to get an education, to go to university. And so when we got to California, that was the one thing he always said: I brought you here so you could study, so you could go to college. And he always had to check our report cards. And if we had a tardy or we had a B, he would complain, like, we needed to have straight A's, we needed to have perfect attendance. And he was a little overboard with it, because even when we were sick, he would make us go to school. Like, I remember one time I had a fever of 102. He still made me go to school. you know
That
um
would not fly these
no,
days.
no, no. Like, I one time I came down with chicken pox.
Oh,
He still, like, made me go to school, and of course they turned me around and said, no, you can't be here, you have chicken pox.
yeah.
And then, like, one time when my sister got her period for the first time, she had major major cramps, so she didn't go to school, and my dad beat her for not going to school. And here's my sister, like, in agonizing, in pain, and on the couch from menstrual cramps, and he hits her for not going to school. So he was like, he
Mhm.
went way too far with the school
Yeah.
thing. But what stayed with me was the importance of going to school, having an education. And he always said, that's the key, that's the key to the future. And so I believed it. And then I decided, yeah, like, I want to go to college. Like, I want to honor the fact that I have that opportunity when my father and my mother and my grandparents didn't have that. And
Mhm.
so I really wanted that. I think most of all, what I wanted was to one day be able to look back and say, all the shit I went through was worth it,
It was worth
because
it. It was, yeah.
I'm successful now. I wanted my life to be completely different from the life I had or could have had in Mexico if I had stayed. And that meant, like, studying really hard, going to college, having a career, um, having retirement and a home, be a homeowner, like, all those things. Like, I wanted those things because I knew that that was the only way I could make all that trauma worth it.
Yeah. To say like
Yeah.
everything I did was worth it because look at where I am. And you've gone, so you went to Pasadena City College, right? And then you went to
You see Santa
UCSC.
Cruz. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Mm.
knew I'm like, I'm gonna fumble these. And then you got your master's too, right?
Yes. Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah, I got my master's, and I've been kind of toying with getting a PhD for several years now. That
La doctora Reina Grande,
Yeah, I
right?
want to be la doctora grande. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm gonna look into it and see if I can still do something like that. But I mean, I don't need a PhD. I just want one, and
Mhm.
also I love being a student. So
Yeah, we
yeah.
can always continue to grow and develop. Now, I do know that you've gotten a lot of accolades for what you've done. So you've gotten like El Premio Aztlán. I know you got the American Book Award. You have the International Latino Book Awards. And then you are a member of the Macando Writers Workshop, right?
Hmm.
And that's with Sandra Cisneros. Have you met her?
Oh
Are
yeah,
you guys
yeah.
friends?
Yeah, I mean, I would
The
love to
house on
say
Mango
yeah that
Street? Yeah.
that we are friends, but she's more like a mentor to me, you
That's
know.
wonderful.
She's my literary madrina, and I have been very fortunate to have been able to meet her and to develop, some kind of friendship and mentorship, where she offers a lot of guidance and support. She actually wrote, the foreword to the 10th anniversary edition of The Distance Between Us. And she's always like telling people about my book. And she's just been very supportive. So I definitely feel fortunate to have that kind of mentorship.
I think that's beautiful. I think that's exactly why we started this podcast too, is to show the way. And I love that, the ones who have gone before us or who've done something before we've done it, to come back and, lift as you climb, and to keep sharing that spotlight with other Latinas, because the only way, one of us gets better is if all of us get better, because I believe that as the community, like, we need to share our stories
Yeah.
and
Oh,
to
yeah.
create those paths. Um, I know we're going to have you back because you have another book coming out this spring.
Yeah.
When is the release date of your book?
May 12th.
May 12th. All right. Well, we will have you on again so we could get you closer to then, and, launch an episode with your book so everyone can hear it. In the meantime, I want to thank you for being on, for sharing your story, for sharing your story, not just here, but for writing it out. I think about the kids who are left behind and then come back. I think they'll have a role model of someone who has come here and really, like, done the work and studied. They can see, a mentor in you. And then I think it's also really important to shine the light on how hard immigration is on families and on children and on the nuclear family that, you were so much looking for. And now you have for your children. Um, are there any other things you want to tell our audience, Reyna?
No, I mean, I just want to say thank you so much for reading my work. I mean, that's why we write, because we're writing for ourselves, but also we're writing for our community. And I really appreciate any time that somebody picks up my book and makes time out of their busy schedule, to engage with my work, and to hopefully, like, it to find inspiration, to find motivation, to feel empowered also by the fact that our stories are important, that our stories are powerful, and that we need to keep telling our stories. We need to keep sharing with each other the things that we go through so that we know that we're not alone, and
Yeah,
that, we need to be supportive as a community. And so I thank you so much for that. And I, let's keep reading, let's keep using literature and books as a bridge to keep us connected as a community.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Well, we will put all of the links to our author Reyna Grande's works in the body of the podcast, so that you guys can access her material, get on it, buy it. The best way to support our community is by spending our dollars within our community. So, Reina, thank you so much, and we look forward to having you back here soon.
Thank you.